Recently, we polled our viewers about travel insurance.
Nearly 40% of you are worried about getting hurt at sea or far from home and getting surprised with an astronomical healthcare bill that you didn't expect. So we went and got answers, real ones.
Hi, I'm Doug, this is Leah, and we're Go Travel Life.
Many of you have asked us to do an episode dedicated to travel insurance. This is that video. We're going to be doing it in two parts.
Yeah, the first part, we're going to talk to Cassandra from insuremytrip.com.
So Cassandra lives and breathes in these policies as a travel insurance expert. But we've got two quick disclaimers before we get started. We are not sponsored at all by insuremytrip.com. We do not get paid anything if you purchase a policy from them. There is no business relationship between the two. They have simply agreed to be our expert that we interview here on this video. Second, we are not travel insurance experts. We have a lot of the same questions that you do. So nothing that we say in this video should be construed as professional advice. It's general information and entertainment for YouTube. So with that said,
yeah, well, you're going to want to stick around for part number 2 when we talk to fellow YouTuber Nora Dunn, and her channel is the Professional Hobo.
So Nora's pretty interesting. We came across her. She's got some stories about using travel insurance, things that she learned along the way, and we thought it would be really helpful for you to hear some of her advice. Not only what should you have with you, but what happens when something happens, and she actually has some stories to share about things that have happened to her. So as our usual details, not drama, we really thought a follow-up part 2 of this would be really helpful for her to bring that information to you.
Yeah, so you're going to want to stick around for that. And now we're going to turn it over to Cassandra from Insure My Trip.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. My name is Cassandra Armstrong. I'm a licensed insurance agent with Insure My Trip. I'm also the customer care supervisor. Insure My Trip is the original quote, compare, and buy site for travel insurance. We are proud to have over 25 years of experience in the industry. We have fully licensed agents. They are unbiased and committed to helping all of our travelers every way that they can. We start from choosing and purchasing a policy at departure, return, and then even navigating through the claims process. We also give customers flexibility to shop the way that works best for them. Travelers can call and chat and speak directly with one of our licensed agents for knowledgeable, personalized support, and they can easily quote, compare, and purchase plans online on their own at insuremytrip.com. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week there. With Insure My Trip, everything you need is in one place. We do side-by-side plan comparisons, a wide range of coverage options, personalized expertise to get what you want, giving you the tools and support to make an informed decision and travel with confidence. Not only that, but we love our job.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to have 4 different segments to the questions. So we're going to go ahead and start with number 1, which is annual versus single trip versus credit card coverage.
So when we did our poll, a quarter of our viewers wanted to know if they take 2 or more trips a year, is an annual policy worth it? What is the break-even point? And what do annual policies leave out compared to single trip plans?
This is a good question. This comes up a lot on our calls in the call center. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all for annual trip travel policies. It's whether an annual plan makes sense after 2, 3 more trips, depending on the traveler, the trips being taken, most importantly, the coverage the traveler's looking for. For example, the primary concern of some travelers protecting the prepaid cost of a trip. Some travelers, it's mainly medical coverage while traveling. Annual and single trip plans can differ significantly in their coverage, so it's best to compare both depending upon your specific trip details.
Okay, all right. Next up, so speaking of annual plans, many travelers take RV trips or regional road trips throughout the year. Does an annual travel insurance policy cover domestic road trips as well, or is coverage strictly for cruise, air travel, or international trips?
So Insure My Trip actually offers multiple carriers that will cover that type of domestic travel, road trips, RV trips for both annual and single trip policies. So just depending upon the distance away from home, duration of the trip, there are options in the market. And since there are often exclusions and restrictions, it's really best to speak with a licensed agent with your specific trip details so we can determine what's best for your needs.
Okay. So also a very common comment we get is, doesn't my premium credit card already cover trip cancellation and road delays? So is credit card protection actually enough for a big trip or cruise, or are there hidden gaps?
Credit card coverage is a built-in benefit. So coverage is usually tied to using that card to pay for some or all of the trip and benefits vary significantly by the card. It can provide a helpful layer of protection, but standalone travel insurance policies are specifically selected to protect the traveler and that trip.
Hmm.
So to answer simply, there are gaps between the two.
Okay.
And before relying solely on the credit card, travelers should review the guide to benefits that their credit card offers and then compare that to the medical evacuation benefits, eligibility requirements of a standalone policy.
Segment number 2, medical expenses and evacuations at sea.
Yeah, this one is a big one. So this was the single biggest poll topic at 38%. We've all seen someone get helipad lifted out of a cruise ship. So onboard cruise medical centers and foreign hospitals can also get astronomically expensive very quickly. So when shopping for a policy, what is the sweet spot for emergency medical limits and medical evacuation coverage?
To find the sweet spot, I think we need to first obviously identify what best meets the customer's needs. Our recommendation would be to first look at plans that are primary versus secondary. Primary can be the first source of reimbursement for eligible expenses, while secondary generally only pays after applicable insurance or coverage has been used. So primary equals come to us first. Then look for medical coverage options that meet the minimum admission fees for hospitals in the area. That's a good start. One way to do that is to use AI or Google. You can get the primary traveling destination or even get a range for the entire area using those tools. Ensure that the medical limits that you're choosing meet or exceed the minimum admission fees for the hospital in those areas. So the sweet spot would be primary coverage with medical coverage limits exceeding those minimum admission fees.
I have one other I know you kind of touched on it, but how do you tell people how much insurance that they need or they should purchase?
Generally, you want to look at what amount of medical fits your specific need. If you have concerns, if you're going overseas, if the trip involves anything that would perhaps put you at higher risk, then you obviously want to go a little bit higher on the medical. The minimum medical that we would recommend would be 500,000.
Okay.
Okay.
That's our general recommendation.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So if someone is on a transatlantic or a trans-Pacific crossing and requires a medical evacuation, we're thinking Coast Guard, helicopter airlift, or the ship actually diverts to disembark them. How do insurance policies handle open ocean rescues? What specific clauses or riders should they be thinking about?
So one thing I want to address is that when many travelers hear medical evacuation, they automatically think of that dramatic open air rescue, and that's not traditionally what will happen. In reality, the medical evacuation coverage on a standalone policy typically refers to transporting a traveler to the nearest appropriate medical facility where they can receive the care that they need. In many situations, the traveler may first receive treatment and be stabilized by the medical team on board the cruise ship. From there, if additional care is medically necessary, then arrangements would be made through transport through the assistance team for the carrier. In the event that a mid-ocean rescue was medically necessary, the assistance team from the carrier would handle that directly. So although it's not something we've ever experienced at Insure My Trip, I know that it does happen. And so the assistance team at any of the carriers would get right on top of that per doctor's orders.
Okay. So we also have viewers that take long haul, back-to-back, or world cruises that extend beyond 90 days, often mixing land and sea tours. Do standard policies cover over 90-day journeys, or do long-term travelers need some type of specialized coverage?
For those longer trips, coverage lasting longer than 90 days really depends on specific policy terms. So every travel insurance plan has a maximum trip length, and those limits can vary considerably from one plan to another. Most have a maximum of 45 days in my experience. For travelers planning a world cruise, back-to-back sailings, or an extended journey that combines cruising with land travel, the entire length and cost of the trip should be considered when comparing coverage. So a standard plan may work if the full journey falls within its maximum trip length requirements, while longer itineraries may require a plan specifically designed to accommodate that extended travel.
But
So this is where it
you can
becomes
get a plan like
incredibly,
that, right?
that is incredibly right.
Okay.
We can actually look at comparing them and ensuring that not only the length of time, but also the coverages will extend
Okay.
appropriately.
Okay.
Okay, segment number 3, the fine print, exclusions, and adventure activities.
Yes, the fun stuff. So 21% of our viewers asked about pre-existing conditions. How does an insurer define a pre-existing condition? What's a look back period that we hear about? And what steps do travelers take right after booking their trip to ensure they qualify for the pre-existing condition waiver?
Very common questions. A traveler-friendly definition for pre-existing conditions is a medical issue you had or were being treated for before purchasing your travel insurance. Each policy defines how far back it looks and may offer a waiver if certain requirements are met. A look back period, think of the look back period as the window of time that the insurance company looks back on your medical history to determine whether a condition is considered pre-existing under the policy. The best time to take care of all of this is immediately after placing the deposit or making the first payment on the trip. Begin the quote, compare, buy steps immediately. Most policies will need to be purchased within the first 14 to 21 days after those initial payments are made to ensure those time-sensitive benefits that we're talking about.
Just a quick addition on the look back period. Is there a common definition of days or is that vary by policy?
It varies by policy.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. So some cruisers, not all, but they book active excursions like deep sea diving or zip lining or maybe even mountain biking. Are standard travel insurance policies going to cover injury during these particular activities, or do you need something a little more specific like an adventure sports rider?
So these are the fun trips. These are the ones that I'm not brave
Yeah.
enough to take. And it really depends on that specific policy and the activity in this case. Travel insurance plans can have exclusions or limitations for certain adventure or high risk activities. So you definitely don't want to assume that every excursion is automatically covered or not covered. Like something like zip lining or mountain biking may be covered under one policy but excluded under another, while activities such as scuba or deep sea diving may have additional requirements or limitations. They may not be, they may be covered, but there may be additional requirements or limitations to make sure that they are covered. So some plans offer adventure sports or those optional upgrade riders for sports coverage. One thing to think about is to plan for those activities, know exactly what it is those excursions include, and give every detail to the licensed agent helping you quote these types of policies. There are policies that do cover specifically for adventure sports that can be purchased.
Okay, good to know. All right. With global uncertainty, our viewers also asked, what happens if my trip is interrupted or canceled due to fuel shortages, civil unrest, or acts of war? Will a standard policy pay out, or do you need to have the cancel for any reason upgrade?
Cancel for any reason is a great upgrade no matter the situation. One thing with cancel for any reason people don't normally realize is that it covers things such as loss of enjoyment. So it is something to consider on every trip.
Okay, during the edit process of this video, I heard Cassandra say that you're covered for loss of enjoyment. And I honestly didn't know what that was, so I assumed maybe other people didn't know what it was either. So we reached out to Cassandra and got some more details. And Leah has that email now.
Yeah, so she defined loss of enjoyment when an issue affects the traveler's ability to enjoy their trip as planned. This was new to us. We asked her for an example, and she said if you had rented an oceanfront beach house for a week, and let's say on day 2 a hurricane is coming and it's covered because it wasn't named before you got your policy, and you lose the ability to enjoy some of the parts of your vacation, like the pool or the beach or anything, right, in that area, then if you have the right cancel for any reason or CFAR policy, you could potentially be covered for that. So that was new information to us that we just wanted to clarify.
Pass along.
For these specifics, they would need to have cancel for any reason coverage. And definitely compare plans fully before purchasing that coverage. A lot of plans have exclusion for war. Another thing to remember is that things like fuel shortages, war can be considered foreseen events. So once an event becomes foreseeable, purchasing a policy afterward will not provide coverage for that event.
Okay, segment number 4, cruise line policies versus the third-party insurers.
So cruise lines, when you go to book a cruise, they always prompt you to add their particular protection plan at checkout. What are the major pros and cons of the cruise line insurance specifically versus a third-party policy from someplace like you guys?
I'm going to answer your question a little bit in reverse because I can't really speak to this coverage specifically offered by every cruise line. Those plans vary widely, and really they are a little more basic in coverage. With third-party insurance, though, like Insure My Trip, like the policies Insure My Trip offers, I should say, travelers can compare multiple highly rated insurers and coverage options in one place. So it gives you that comparison. You have a lot more plans to choose from. They also consider factors such as age, trip details, allowing the coverage to be better tailored to the traveler's needs. So plus our licensed agent can help you find and compare options that are the best fit so that it's tailored completely to the trip and to the traveler. The biggest advantage is choice here. So being very transparent and clear, you have more insurers, more options, and personalized support when you need it with a third-party insurer.
Okay, that makes sense. Viewers also pointed out that the third-party policy prices spike significantly as travelers age or have strict age caps, whereas cruise line plans often charge a flat rate regardless of age. Is that accurate? And at what age does a cruise line policy actually become a better financial deal?
And kind of piggybacking off my last answer, in general, cruise line plans will have lower premiums because of limitation to coverages, not because necessarily of age, but also the way that their claims are paid out.
Okay.
So in this instance, cruise lines would generally provide a reimbursement in the form of a voucher, which can come with certain restrictions, such as expiration dates, limitations to when they can be used, etc. Third-party travel insurance policies, on the other hand, they make the traveler whole again by paying eligible claims directly to the traveler in the form of monetary reimbursement instead of travel credits.
Do you see age caps often?
The largest age cap that I have seen in my experience is 100 years old.
Okay.
And we've only had one traveler that exceeded that age cap. So with
Okay.
the large array of plans offered, we usually don't have too much restriction with age.
I hope we're still traveling at 100 plus. That's awesome.
I
Okay,
as well.
one last question, Cassandra. If a
Sure.
viewer is booking a cruise today, what are the top 2 or 3 things they should do within 14 days of making their initial deposit, as you mentioned, to ensure they don't lock themselves out of key protections?
First, they want to explore their options. Use a comparison site. If you're looking at the cruise line options, call, ask what their coverages look like, get some details on their plan. After that, weigh those options, specifically focusing on the plans offered by the cruise line and those that fit your needs from any comparison site that you use, specifically Insure My Trip. Finally, book the plan that fits your needs and budget. Set up an online account for access, look over your documents, and then relax. Wait for that trip to come up and enjoy the rest of the ride.
Okay, awesome.
Is there any questions that we missed that like your clients ask you all the time?
No, you guys touched on a lot of it. One of the things that I think is what documents do I need to have when I'm traveling? And I think your next guest will touch on that. With travel insurance, there isn't necessarily an insurance card that someone would be issued. Certain plans do have a card, but with travel insurance, we generally say print out the certificate of coverage, the confirmation of coverage that the insured receives when they first purchase the plan, and just fold that up neatly, put it in your suitcase, and keep that on hand. Worst case scenario, if they do not have those documents and they need to file a claim, give us a call and we can give or send us an email and we can send over the information within 24 hours.
Okay, that's good. Cassandra, we want to thank you very much for spending the time with us. I mean, I think this is very helpful information.
Yes.
I love the, make sure that you're looking at the insurance options when you're booking. I think that's really important. People don't necessarily do that. So that's a high point for me, lesson learned. Is there anything else you want to add before we close or wrap?
Don't be afraid to reach out. Ask your licensed insurance agent for assistance when it comes to these more intricate, higher value travel arrangements that you have. We want to be sure that you're covered, that we can make you whole again. That's what the insurance carrier is for. Also, be sure to ask any questions, not too big, too small, silly. We love questions in the insurance industry, and we'll answer them as much as we possibly can.
Okay. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so that's the framework for searching for and selecting the right insurance policy. And I think one of the big takeaways for me was that you really should be shopping for the travel insurance when you're booking your cruise, same time.
We thought we would share what we do for our insurance needs.
Yeah, so currently we carry the Allianz annual policy, which I know is very popular with a lot of people. We tend to, because of the costs of our trips here in the early go-go years, we tend to go with the higher like $20,000 limits as far as cancellation. And we know that the cap on our plan is $50,000 for medical, which we're not necessarily comfortable with. So the annual plan will continue to carry, so that will cover our cancellations and some medical things. But what we do is we purchase a Geo Blue rider specific for medical, and as Doug mentioned earlier, we look at what would the potential medical expenses be in the particular area where we travel, and we will have a Geo Blue rider for that. Now that's what we do today currently. That may not be what we do. Yeah. You know, say we go to see the gorillas in Rwanda at some point. There may be some additional insurance we feel is needed, but that's what we do. Yeah. So you've got your policy purchased, you go on your trip, and something happens. And I think this is where Nora and her sage advice can help make sure this goes as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, so next we have 5 questions for Nora, and so we'll turn it over to her now.
Hi there, I'm Nora Dunn, and I'm otherwise known as the Professional Hobo. And thank you very much for having me on to talk about travel insurance. I'm a bit of a nerd on the topic of travel insurance, as well as travel gear and traveling smart in style. My YouTube channel, which is the Professional Hobo, is a culmination of tips and tricks that I've learned in the last 20 years of being a digital nomad.
What is on your checklist of documents that travelers must save before they even leave the house?
So I am a real stickler for having backups and backups of backups. So not only do I have the original documents that I need to travel with, obviously the passport, plus at least one other form of photo ID. I also save images of these on an encrypted USB stick that I travel with. I've also got them saved on my computer, which I travel with, and it's automatically backed up to the cloud. So if I lose my computer, I can get into the cloud backup program. I also have a program called 1Password. I highly recommend having a password manager, not only to manage your passwords and keep them all really secure, but then also to be able to share the master password to this password manager with somebody back home. That way, if you're in a bind for whatever reason, they have access to the accounts. They can act on your behalf as needed in order to help you through an emergency. And an emergency can include something that involves having them advocate on your behalf for travel insurance. All of this aside, the most important safeguard that I have with me absolutely all the time while I'm traveling is a little piece of paper, and it's a little piece of paper that sits in my wallet. On this piece of paper it's a photocopy of my passport. So I've got that photocopy of my passport in my wallet because usually when I arrive at a destination, I lock my passport in the safe of my hotel or my accommodation, and I only go out with the photocopy. On this photocopied piece of paper on the back, I write down my travel insurance information. I write travel insurance, I write the name of the company, I write the policy number, and I also write the phone number that needs to be for the phone number of the insurance company that you can contact in the case of an emergency. That way, I've got it with me at all times because, of course, a travel emergency is never going to happen on our watch. And it's never going to be predictable. So no matter what happens, either I can reach into my wallet for this, or if I'm incapacitated, somebody else can reach into my wallet and start the process of making an insurance claim.
We've heard there are strict timelines. If a flight is delayed or an injury occurs, how quickly do you need to contact the insurance company?
As a general rule of thumb, as soon as possible. As soon as humanly possible is when you should contact the insurance company. When at all possible, you contact the insurance company before you need to seek any medical help or assistance. We know, of course, that's not always possible. That's okay. The insurance company will understand if you're unconscious and you've been taken to the hospital and perhaps even subjected to surgery, that there is a level of understanding. However, it is critically important that as soon as you can, you call the insurance company, or somebody who's acting on your behalf calls the insurance company. So if you are traveling with a partner, make sure your partner has your travel insurance policy information on the hand all the time. And that way, if you're incapacitated in any way, your partner can call the insurance company. The reason this is important, there's a number of reasons why this is important, but one of the reasons why this is important is because the insurance company might only provide coverage in certain medical facilities at your destination and not in others. So they may have a relationship with a hospital where they've got direct payment abilities and a much easier claims process. They can tell you to go to that medical facility where the claims process will be much easier versus perhaps another medical facility that is not recommended or not on their list, etc. So when do you call the insurance company? As soon as possible.
If we have to file a claim, will the insurance companies accept just a photo of the paperwork, or do I have to have original PDFs and physical copies?
The answer to this is it depends. It will depend on the insurance company as to how the claims are processed, and it'll depend on your policy. So one of the primary pieces of advice that I always give to people is read your policy, read it before you need it. And actually read it before you buy it, to be honest, to make sure that it is going to be able to cover you in the times that you need it. When I did my big insurance claim that I'll tell you about a little bit later, that was a long time ago, so paper copies were required of everything. I had to submit all the original receipts by mail. These days, I believe it's more common than not to be able to file your receipts electronically. You definitely still need to keep those originals. Do not let go of the originals, because in the event of perhaps a claim going a little bit sideways or getting denied and you have to appeal the claim, you may need to provide the original receipt. So even if you submit copies, always hang on to those originals.
If a traveler gets hurt in a foreign country and the documents are in a foreign language, do I have to pay to get those translated, or will the insurer accept them as is?
Once again, it depends. It'll depend on the country where the claim is being, where you've run into trouble. If it's perhaps a more obscure country, the chances are greater that translations will be required. This is one of those things that really will boil down to the insurance company.
What is the most complex or largest claim that you have gotten reimbursed as a traveler, and what was the one piece of paperwork that saved the day?
So a number of years ago, and this is going back quite a bit, thank goodness, knock on wood, my partner at the time, we were in Thailand, and he got dengue fever. And there's a few different strains of dengue fever. He got the bad one, and this bad one landed him in hospital for a solid week. And so there were a number of things that went wrong with this. First of all, there were a number of aspects of this claim that needed to be covered. The first element was the outpatient expenses, and this was him going to the hospital and getting the tests before he became a patient, and the tests revealed that he had dengue fever. Then he was checked into the hospital, and there were inpatient expenses. And we did have a direct pay option for this, so the hospital did directly get paid by the insurance company. We also had onward travel plans that had to be canceled. So we had a couple of trains and a couple of planes all scheduled, and hotels and everything. We had to cancel all of those and rebook. And that was into subsequent 3 other countries. We were going through Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. So there was a number of different currencies and countries where we had travel arrangements that we had to rebook. And just to sweeten the pot, our visas were running out. And in fact, during this hospital stay, our visas ended. So we actually had to go to immigration and extend these visas. And by we, I mean me, because my partner was busy flat on his back in the hospital fighting for his life. So I ended up doing all of the advocating and all of the communication with the insurance company throughout this process. So as I said earlier, the very first thing I did was I called the insurance company. I told them what was happening. They gave me guidance. They said, okay, go to this place, do this, keep this. They were very helpful. As the days went by, I continued to talk to them and I kept them abreast of what was happening. And I had many questions because, of course, we were dealing with trip cancellation. We were dealing with medical expenses. We were dealing with this strange visa situation where visas had to be extended. So there was a lot of moving parts to this. The hospital that we stayed in was very helpful. It was a hospital that was very well equipped to deal with foreigners. So that in fact, we had a representative at the hospital who spoke really good English and was able to accompany me to the immigration office while we extended our visas. And she worked in a way she was able to prepare all the paperwork and to make it happen as smoothly as possible. One of the primary reasons why this claim went through successfully is I kept meticulous records of absolutely everything. I logged every phone call that I had with the insurance company. I kept every piece of paper I got from anybody that had anything to do with this claim. And when it came time to file this claim, because at this time, in order to file the claim for out-of-pocket expenses, the only way to get reimbursed was to mail in the original receipts. I literally mailed in a stack of receipts and I had them ordered, I had them collated, I kept copies of everything and I kept copies in the exact same order. I had all the pages numbered, I had a table of contents, and that was really what saved the day because the claims process did not go smoothly. And what I mean by that is there were various aspects of the claim that were delayed. So the money kept coming through in trickles, like the outpatient expenses got paid, in part and then another part. The inpatient expenses were covered directly by the hospital, which is great. The trip cancellation stuff went completely haywire. Part of the reason being there were expenses in multiple currencies. I had a train ticket in Thai baht. I had another train ticket and a hotel booked in Malaysian ringgit. And I had another hotel booked in Singaporean dollars. And not only were these claims really coming through in a bizarre and trickled way, but then there were just things that didn't come through at all. So, and then there were things that came through wrong. So as an example, the train ticket and hotel that were booked in Malaysian ringgit were reimbursed to us in using the conversion rate of Thai baht, which was 10 times weaker. So instead of getting a check for $200 for the arrangements, we got a check for $20. And so I called the insurance company and I said, hey, just so you know, you gave us a check for $20. It should have been $200. And they said, nope. And I said, well, actually, yes. And they said, no, it's right. And I said, well, actually, it's wrong. So I said, okay, turn to your claim. Do you have the claim in front of you? They said, yes. I said, okay, turn to page 9A, right? And I'm looking at 9A and they're looking at 9A. And I said, you see the receipt? This is a receipt for a train ticket in Malaysian ringgit. And they said, yes. Do you see the MYR on the receipt next to the dollar, next to the currency? They said, yes. I said, that stands for Malaysian ringgit. Do the calculation. The conversion does not work out to $20, it works out to $200. So there were conversations like this that I had to have, meticulous conversations. There were other elements of the claim that just got outright denied for no reason. In this case, I had to escalate. So I called the insurance company. I said, you denied this. I don't understand why. They said, we're just denying. And I said, well, okay, I need to talk to your manager. And I had to escalate a few elements of this claim many times. I had to speak to managers. And I think at some stage of the game, I worked my way up to the top of the tree. I just remained patient. I remained diplomatic. And I was absolutely sure that this was a claim it was a legitimate claim. I had the policy language. I was able to refer to the actual insurance policy. I would say, hey, look, on clause 12A, you say this. This is what this is. And I just had to reiterate and reiterate and reiterate. The insurance claims process can be exhausting. You may well find that if you need to make an insurance claim, it's not going to go through right. And elements of that claim may be denied. I encourage you not to accept that initial assessment and to walk away, but instead to fight it. If you believe that you are entitled to money for that claim, if you have the documentation, if you have the policy in front of you and are able to refer to the right terms and clauses, and you have an arsenal of patience, you will get your money at the end of the day. However, it may just take some time. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this very long story about making a claim has given you perhaps a little bit of information as well as a little bit of inspiration. Should an emergency hit you along the way, travel insurance is ultimately there to help you. Sadly, they may make it a little bit difficult in the meantime, but you will get what you need when you need it. So I do always categorically travel with insurance, even though I've had trouble in the claims process. The potential risks of not having insurance and having a major catastrophe could ruin myself or most people really financially. And I'm not willing to take that risk. So I will always pay for that travel insurance. I know that premium can sometimes feel a little bit of a bite, but there's a reason it exists, and I do use it. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Well, thank you, Nora. Awesome.
So I know that was a lot of information, a lot of questions. We really appreciate you taking the time to dial in for them. If the information was helpful or you feel it could help someone else, please share our video out. That's how YouTube knows we've got something worth watching. If you have a travel insurance story you'd like to share with everyone or some piece of paperwork that saved the day, do the rest of the community a favor and share it with us. We read every single comment. Safe travels, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.